Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. And I'm very excited to bring back now my co-host with me, who is now this is his second co-hosting opportunity, a seasoned veteran. Even though Lead Squared has been a partner of the EdUp Experience for 3 years, Shub is hid behind the scenes, and now he's come forward. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Shub Misra. He is a head of business development and partnerships for Lead Squared. Long title. Shub, what's going on? How are you?
Doing all right, Joe. Excited to be here. And I think, like you said, now I feel like a veteran here. I'm excited about this, excited for the conversation, and let's see what we learn today.
I know we're going to learn a lot. We've got a lot of questions to ask. It's a really interesting. We all know this, right? But it's an important time in higher education, especially now as we see disruption and lots of disruptions. Besides the fact of the quote unquote enrollment cliff, we see declining enrollment, net tuition revenue issues. We know the headwinds, but it is important to keep a focus on the student. And the more that we can keep the focus on the student, the easier it is to get through disruption. There's always going to be some kind of disruption. It's a question of its severity, how long, how fast. COVID was a good example of that, as we really marched through that as an industry in very unique ways. And so I wanted to bring back a group, and they provided us new voices. We've had somebody on from their organization before, but I think it's important to have them. And now, ladies and gentlemen, one at a time. First, we have Jennifer Kolb. She's Vice President of Partnerships and Workforce Development at MedCerts. Jennifer, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having us today.
Thank you for being here. And let's get in your compadre, or colleague, if you will, in higher education. We call our friends colleagues. That's the way it works. Here we go. He's Mark Adamo, Senior Vice President of Enrollment and Student Experience at MedCerts. Mark, what's going on?
How's it going? Glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you guys, and let's level set for the audience. Perhaps this is their first time hearing about MedCerts. Really, whoever would like to jump in, don't let me pick, because I'll say the wrong person. That's typically how it works. But tell us about MedCerts. Just give us the 2-minute elevator. What do you do and how do you do it?
Perfect. Well, I'd rather go 2 hour, but I'll condense it for you.
That'd be a long podcast.
Yes.
We're excited to announce the first of its kind higher education podcast conference, brought to you by Edu Alliance, the EdUp Experience, and Podium. This is happening Saturday, July 12th at the University of Illinois Chicago campus. This is an in-person event, one day only, the first of its kind. This is for people working in and around higher education who are interested in starting a podcast, who may have a podcast, want to learn more about podcasting. So if you want to be there, please go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn how you can get your early bird registration, see who the keynote will be, and how you can submit proposals to be a part of this amazing inaugural conference. So that, again, go to higheredpodcon.com to learn more.
So in a nutshell, MedCerts, what we do is we provide flexible, self-paced online training in healthcare and IT. Our goal is to help students gain industry-recognized certifications for in-demand careers. We try to be attainable for the average student, the student who maybe doesn't have their mind made up yet in terms of like what they want to do from an educational track perspective, and that student who maybe knows that they need something extra in order to be able to get into that career in either healthcare or IT. So we try to make ourselves very attainable. We're 100% online. We have a flexible curriculum, so it's not bound to like particular hours of the day. You don't have to have a vehicle for transportation. So that's our goal: flexible, self-paced, online training, healthcare and IT, two very, very expansive industries.
You know, healthcare and IT, right? If you're going to look at expanding your program set, you think, well, healthcare, that's where you go first. You might think about a business program here or there, but even better than that is a technology-based business program, right? As you look at what the future looks like, you know, we need greater healthcare for the growing populations, and we need people who understand and can execute on technology and end up in jobs, right, Jennifer? Which is an important part, I think, of I probably froze for a second, but we keep those freeze moments in, and they're nice pauses. But getting to work is an important part of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt. We know in the past 5 years, the average hospital has had over 106% turnover. That's about $7,000 to $9,000 in cost incurred a day. So that's the name of the game. I mean, there's a lot of paths to get someone to that job. And that's our goal, to build the strategic partnerships that get us there.
Why is that, do you think? 106% turnover in hospitals. That seems, I mean, I don't know what I would expect, but it seems like that would be a number I would not think about. I wouldn't think that it would go, anything would over 100% is bad, right?
Yeah.
Really anything over 30% is probably bad.
Yeah. Healthcare is a tough industry. I mean, we're still emerging post-COVID. It was tough. I mean, people were overworked, understaffed, and there's a lot of challenges that go into healthcare and schedules. I mean, they don't stop, right? They run 24/7, every second, every minute of a day. And it takes a lot of people to keep that engine running. So, and also you think, a lot of times people think healthcare and they think a doctor, a nurse, right? But there are so many, from food services to janitorial services to front office administrators to phlebotomists, EKG technicians, surgical technologists. I mean, the list goes on, hundreds and hundreds of jobs at one hospital. So it's a lot of staff to keep. It's a lot of staff to retain. And just in general, there's a workforce shortage. We don't have enough people for the healthcare jobs that are open. So the landscape's really competitive. I mean, if you look at job requisitions for a surgical technologist, you'll see anywhere from a $5,000 to $10,000 signing bonus just for taking the job. So they're kind of fighting over that same talent. And so, our solution is, well, we've got to build more of it. And so that's what we're looking to do, is get more people in those entry level allied healthcare IT roles.
Shub, I see you you're chomping at the bit to jump in here.
I think I was actually curious pretty much because so we work with a lot of healthcare and IT nursing institutions on our end, allied healthcare, allied IT. We also saw during COVID, the demand of nurses and healthcare workers was at all-time peak, and a lot of these institutions were adding value to that piece of it. But like Jennifer, Mark, do you think, how critical is really the localized workforce development in all of this process? Like for example, like for you guys at MedCerts, do you really ensure that all of your programs align with regional labor market demands, or you look at the US as a whole? How does it really work? How do you guys make sure that it's actually, and especially with what you said, Jennifer, it is just not doctors and nurses, right? It's a lot more than that. So how does the localization part of it really come into the picture in all of this?
Yeah, I love that question. I don't get it very often, because when we typically talk about workforce shortages, we look at a whole national landscape or even a statewide. And the reality is we can try to solve for those big numbers, but what matters at the end of the day is real people getting in a real job in their community. So we absolutely look at demand and promote, encourage enrollment and roles based on the needs of the local healthcare system. At MedCerts, we partner with a lot of nonprofit organizations, workforce development organizations. We don't want to train people for the sake of training them, right? If we know the hospital there in their community is fully staffed with phlebotomists, we don't want to put more people in a phlebotomist program. We want to put them in roles that align to that employer. So especially to answer your question, when we work with large systems, large healthcare systems that span multiple states, many regions, many geographies, we work to build a scalable solution that's kind of turnkey for each of those sites. But based on that demand and the openings they have, every time we're going to have to tailor it on a very regional and targeted level.
And I want to make it clear, Shub, before you continue, that any time a guest is impressed by a question, it is a question I gave to my co-host. Just generally, I want to make that disclaimer. Okay, back to you, Shub.
No, point taken. No, I think that's pretty interesting. And I was actually looking at some of the work board agencies and all this sort of stuff when we work with a lot of similar institutions. Just a quick flip on the same side. There's a lot of health system which is a not-for-profit system, and it's growing at its own pace. But there's also an employer side which is on the private side of the world, right? Where you've got large giants who are trying to invest in this sort of stuff. You have companies like Coursera and Guild and all of these companies coming into the mix as well, right? So what sort of trends are you guys seeing in general from an employer perspective? What sort of investments they are trying to make sure to upskill their workforce, but at the same time work with institutions like yourself and similar folks in the market? Is there some sort of trend that we are observing in general?
Oh man, again, to Mark's point, I could talk about that for 2 hours.
Another
I'll
question
try
I
to
gave
keep
to
it
Shub.
to the I could try to keep it to that point. So a couple of things. One, historically in our space, in the healthcare space, there's been something called 5250, an employee benefit that employers provide to say, hey, you want to go work on your degree, get a certification, continue your education. We will pay $5,250 a year for you to have something that goes to your tuition. What we are finding is that despite having that employee benefit, it's just not enough. There has to be alignment and strategic initiatives around who uses that benefit for what open roles. And so a lot of what we do is not just, hey, I mean, doing that is great, right? People can upskill, choose to self-select, use that employee benefit, have no debt when they go into college, get a certification, get a degree. But we have worked with a lot of employers lately that say, okay, let's actually take someone from one role, use that employee benefit and upskill them into this other role. And I was just actually on site with one of our hospital partners yesterday, where we were talking about the just sheer volume and interest of hand raisers. They've got 5 spots and they have over 50 people applying. So when it's very clear the pathway that's identified for someone, then we see an interest and we see it working, and overall really, really successful to the tune of 100% completion, 100% job retention 2 years later. So that would be the biggest trend. I think historically we've had a lot of like, oh, let's do this from a 30,000 foot view. And to your initial question, okay, now it's time we've got to like take it a couple layers down and make it really targeted and really specific.
You know,
Mark, I want to bring you in because enrollment is we do talk so much about workforce these days. I think at any level, right? Because people want to get to work. But the first step to getting to work is you need some form of post-secondary education. You don't need it, but there's an ongoing dialogue. Should you get a degree? Should you go for the stackable credentials or certifications? Is it an and situation? And I think it is an and situation. And I think it's just the step that the student takes, because not every student's going to take the same first step. And MedCerts really allows a different way for a student to become educated, exposed to different industries. Can you just talk about the way your enrollment lays out and what types of students are coming to you, and how do they become interested, and are they nervous? And, just so many questions about enrollment. That's my background. So take it how you want it. We'll go from there.
No, absolutely. I almost feel like you were listening to a conversation I had earlier where I literally said, we are the stepping stone into education for many demographics. And what I mean by that is we genuinely believe in the and that you mentioned, because we know that our programs are the starting point. They're like the launch pad for most students and most individuals looking to get into a career. So our goal is to align them with what can actually make sense for them, depending on what their needs are, depending on what their interests are. Like we go through a full conversational style, consultation. And our number one priority is identifying if MedCerts is a school of choice for that student. And what I mean by that is, do we make sense for where they're trying to go and what they're trying to accomplish? Do we have the actual product that can get them there? Because our catalog is very expansive. We could probably find a program to put any student into that we talk to. Does it make sense? Is it going to get them into that career? And for some people, honestly, that is the end of the road, is just kind of getting their step into that career. They end up really enjoying it. Maybe they level up somewhere down the road. In some cases, they just kind of end up sticking to that particular career and they're happy with it. But for the gross majority of our students, they want to be a student. They want that 4-year degree. They want to be able to really elevate themselves in the educational space, which will in turn, hopefully provide them that career benefit. And we are that place that can kind of get them to a little bit of a structure. Yes, we're flexible. And I talked a lot about that earlier, but they still need to log on and take the program. Like it's not flexible to us to a sense of like, oh, I can do it for like 1 hour a month and I'm good. No, like you have to put in 12 to 15 hours a week for some of our expansive programs in order to be able to complete it on time, in order to be able to get the most success out of it. So consultative conversation, we try to ensure that the student understands the commitment that they're going to have to, they're going to have to make in order to be successful in this program. And the biggest goal is like, we want them to be job ready, not just educated, because we know we're not the end all be all for the education piece. They're going to probably extend their education in a 2 or 4 year institution. So our goal is how do we get them job ready, not just educated in that certification so they can go pass an exam.
Yeah, and Shub, I'll pass it in a second, but I want to just highlight what you said, because I'm a university and I'm looking at MedCerts going, there's just so many competitors out there now, and they're just taking, they're taking students. Am I competing with MedCerts? And I hear you saying, well, maybe the students that MedCerts is serving were not thinking about that degree right at that moment. They wanted to get a career. They wanted to start earning some money through a certification and decide down the line that they're going to go back to school. They wouldn't have come to my university in the first place. So really what you're doing is cultivating a pipeline of future students for university, right? Isn't that the way I should think about it?
Yeah. And if you think about it, who would the university rather have? A student who's already been through an educational program and has completed successfully and has gotten into a career in healthcare or IT and knows exactly what they're trying to accomplish. They're going to probably finish that degree more so 100%. Than the student who just jumps in.
Those sound effects are really nice.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, well, I've got other ones I'll use too. I was going to play this for you, Mark, because we asked Jennifer so many questions. Let me see if this worked. It was you on a recording complaining a little bit.
Oh, no. It's time now to turn this mush into muscles.
Because we didn't get you on fast enough. So, no.
It's only you knew, Joe, how fitting that was for Mark. Our conversations are often around, what's the best salt? What's the best protein? What's the best latest workout routine? Well,
I love that. Well, Shuba, and you know a little bit about this too, right? I mean, with the work that you do, enrollment is fluid.
Yep.
It's not. There's not a direct path.
No, absolutely. No, I think we work with a lot of career institutions out there, vocational institutions out there. And I think this is a conversation that's been going on for a very long time, especially when we talk about student experience, right? That do you want to use AI for scale, or do you want to keep maintaining the personal connection part of it, right? I really would love to understand from your perspective at MedCerts, right? How you're essentially making sure that you're able to maintain that sort of balance in terms of human touch and experience, but at the same time ensure that your folks, your people internally are not spending a lot of time on redundant tasks. But we're still trying to find that balance out, but we'd love to know what you guys are doing out there.
Artificial intelligence.
So we are using AI, right? I don't know who isn't at this point in 2025. You'd probably be pretty far behind if you haven't started yet. But the touch points of the student enrollment and the student experience are all still maintained by a human being. So getting the student enrolled, having that consultative conversation, their support that they receive once they become a student, the career services that we provide, all of that is still a one-to-one human interaction. And we are still actually assigning and dedicating a representative to a student. It's not just like a pool system where a student calls into an 800 number and they get a different person every time. They get a dedicated rep that ends up being their go-to. And obviously, if that rep's not available, as you can imagine, they may be helping somebody else at the time in which you may need help, Joe. So you're going to end up talking to somebody else, but you have that person that you could reach out to in a one-on-one text perspective. You can call them directly, leave them a voicemail, right? Like we still provide that one-to-one experience for all of our students from hello all the way to completed program and career. We use AI for the things that don't need a human touch. Like how do we develop the right cadence of who needs what touch point? So if we notice there's a group of students who maybe 5 or 10% behind where they should be, once again, we're flexible, but we still have a schedule we try to keep our students to, because we know if you want to be successful, you've got to complete a program in a certain amount of time for you to be able to get yourself moving. That plays into that we're a launch pad for, higher education, because we try to get them wired a little bit to follow a schedule, to get something done in a timely manner, while still maintaining who we really are at the core, which is a school that's very accessible to a lot of people. But we try to mirror those two and marry those two very well.
No, I love that. I love that. So just one more question, Joe, and I think that's a very interesting thing Mark said about using the human touch on the admissions part of it. One of the biggest problems we have observed in the short-term courses or career readiness courses or workforce courses is people tend to drop off because you are dealing with students who are dealing with so much of other stuff in their life, right? They tend to drop off in the process post-enrollment. They don't complete their degrees, right? They don't move forward at times. And it's a problem that has been spoken about way too much.
Yikes!
How are you guys dealing with that in general? Like, how are you trying to make sure that people actually go ahead and complete their programs? Any support systems in place in general from a services perspective? How are you guys dealing with that?
I can't give it all away, tell you everything, but no, it's not anything that nobody already knows. We try to do the little things very, very well. We ensure at the enrollment stage that we're identifying their true reason for wanting to be in this program. And we try to identify any experience they've had prior to talking to MedCerts where they did not succeed. What happened? What took place? We document all that. We have an amazing handoff between our kind of front of the house from our education consultants to our support representatives. We make sure to document the students' why. We understand who their sphere of influence is. Not every student has a sphere of influence around them. They're kind of on their own. So we have to understand that. And that changes how we have the conversation, because we almost have to play that role for that student. And it doesn't work all the time. As you alluded to, I mean, this is a demographic who, in most cases, doesn't really know where they want to go or what they want. And this is their first step into that journey. So it's a lot of pressure on us to ensure that we're learning about that student, having a quality conversation, and making sure that we can help start that journey of holding them accountable. And sometimes it's not a nice conversation. Sometimes it is a little bit of a gut check. Like, hey, you're 2 months behind, but you said all of these things when you were enrolling. Like there's obviously a gap there in what you said you believed in, what you said you wanted, and what your actions are actually, proving to be.
Yeah.
Jennifer, I want to... Okay. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to add to that from the partner perspective. We see that when there's someone at the table with that student, whether it is an academic institution or a workforce office or an employer partner, it's not just MedCerts encouraging and pushing that student along. They've got support staff there locally with them too, and that has a huge impact. I mean, we have very, very high outcomes in completion, certification, and success when they are training for the job. They know it's the carrot at the end.
Tell them like it is.
Yeah. I want you to talk, Jennifer, a little bit of getting back to the workforce, right? So where you started at the end, go to the beginning, kind of come back to the end a little bit. Maybe not the end, but the beginning of the end, or the beginning of the beginning. You know what I'm saying. Get out of my head right now, Jennifer. Push for talent is real. Like institutions, and I mean organizations, I probably should say organizations and businesses, all for good hires. They're really, it's kind of a flipped model the way it used to be when you worked at a school that offered programs and you had any kind of workforce or career services. You were going out and you were really trying to get those employers to take the students. And we're seeing that flip where the employers are coming with new models to say, I have to have more people. What can you do for me to get me more people? Is that shift real? And are there really innovative models out there that you can think of? And I'll give you one example to kind of get to think about it. But I was on with a president who was telling me that their local, some of the local businesses are trying to recruit students in the sophomore year of high school to get them trained, to get them ready to take their programs upon completion so that they could lock them up for 4 years. And I'm just going, wow, it's crazy. What are you seeing out there?
Now you're in my head, Joe. Yes, that's exactly how I was going to answer your question.
It's going to be a erratic conversation. Get ready.
So I'll give you a really specific example of this. A couple years ago, we started an initiative in Pennsylvania with Emerge Education, Cumberland Valley School District, which is the fastest growing school district in the state, and UPMC, which is the largest nonprofit healthcare system in the state. And we started putting students in MedCerts programs as early as 11th grade. UPMC looked at the MedCerts catalog and said, if students go into one of these 7 programs, we can't guarantee them a job, but we'll guarantee an interview, right? And then clinical support, and the goal is job obtainment. It went really, really well, and it has grown like wildfire. We have many employers, many school districts now across the state of Pennsylvania. Those students sitting in the high school classroom, they are our future workforce. So the earlier we can get to them, the faster we can get to them, truly the better. And, in that high school model, the students, the parents, the guardians, they didn't have to pay $1 for their student or their kid to go through a MedCerts program. It was funded by the school systems, by the employers themselves. And so again, just MedCerts being that bridge, we can help them open the door at that healthcare system, get started, and then figure out what is that long-term career path in healthcare. Use the employee benefit, go to one of the partner universities we have that provide credit for students for having completed a MedCerts program. Shippensburg University does that, right? So
amazing.
We've fed them a pipeline of talent. We help them get their foot in the door. And to Mark's earlier point, who doesn't want a student that's super motivated to get a certification, then get a degree, then grow within a healthcare system? So that you took the words out of my mouth, Joe. Those innovative models, we're starting to build them all over the country, because when you think of filling the jobs, you have to have a multi-pronged strategy as an employer. You can't just rely on the same methods. You have to get creative. You have to think outside of the box, and you have to find people in the community. And that can start a lot earlier than we have historically thought of.
One more in Chuba, and then you can take it home, ask as many as you want. But you mentioned something that's very important, very complicated, and that is credit recognition for programs. And we all know this. If anybody listening to this podcast ever knows how I feel about prior learning assessment and credit for prior learning, I think it is a huge miss in the majority of institutions in the United States that have prior learning assessment policies that read like tax code. Students can't figure them out. And the best way to do this is to say, hey, look, this partner we have is training them in this, whatever this is, and we're going to take those credits in a block. We're not going to look for a one-to-one. We're going to say, if you take this, it equals this, and so that it makes it really easy for the student to understand. That's not always as easy as it sounds to get higher education to do that. And I think it doesn't properly honor the student and the journey they took. And we have to do a better job in higher education to honor that prior learning and give credit for it. What's going on out there, Jeff? That's my setup, because I know how complicated it is, and to give you an opportunity to tell me that it's as complicated as I make it sound, because we're not that great at it. Universities are just, because we have faculty, we have administrators that go, well, it doesn't quite fit. I mean, we could make it fit, but then this and then that. You need partners that are willing to be innovative, right?
Higher Ed PodCon is coming. Go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn more.
Yeah, and I think MedCerts is really fortunate that we have. We have a growing list of almost 10 universities that do give credit, anywhere from up to 30 hours of credit for having completed these certifications. We also have a network of universities that are putting the certifications early on in the degree pathway, so that a student from the jump can get a national credential, go ahead and start working while they're finishing that degree. So we have been lucky and fortunate to partner with some very forward-thinking universities, Franklin University, University of Phoenix, just to name a few, but that are very focused on how do we continue that degree pathway? How do we recognize that prior learning credit? Because all the MedCerts programs are leading to an industry credential from the certifying body for that occupation, for that role. So from a MedCerts perspective, it's a series of courses with an industry credential. Like there's a lot of substance. There's a lot of tangibility in those courses in the full program. And so we are seeing universities recognize that, and we help them, right? I mean, we've got a team of subject matter experts that can sit down with and look through the catalog that already exists for a university, do a mapping, and help make sure it does align and it is the right fit.
Shub.
Yep. No, I think so. Jennifer, I love what you said. I think in general, with the rise of the whole workforce analytics platforms and systems that exist out there now, people have more visibility into how credentialed hires perform, right? But at the same time, if we just flip it around, right, I'm pretty sure a lot of these employers have certain metrics or outcomes that they're most focused on, right? Which when they come to you, they're probably like, okay, these are the numbers, these are the metrics that we want to look at. What are those metrics, I think, first of all, and how do you really make sure that this is propagated back to you guys, your team, the institution partners that you work with, so that going back to the fact that you have to innovate and you have to make sure everyone is focused towards a common goal, how do you really make sure those numbers actually go back to these folks as well?
Yeah, I'll let Mark add to this, but Mark, I'll kick it off. So when we are in the upfront partnership conversation, if you will, it typically comes back to three things that we're all equally aligned on. So it's our goals, it's their goals, it's completion of the program, certification attainment, and then job attainment. So Mark oversees our team that is leading the charge to get all of those milestones in place, the data organized and reported back. So then we will say, okay, completion, certification, job attainment, and then focus on regional goals. What are the open jobs? Who are the local employers tied to our university partnership? I mean, a very specific example, we work with University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and we have two large employer partners that they're our partners, they're University of Tennessee partners, right? And so we are building a model based on their open recs to say, how does a student co-enroll at University of Tennessee in MedCerts, right? Because they're using the MedCert certification programs as a part of their course catalog, and then get those students encouraged and in Mark's team and those upfront conversations, encouraging them to get into the right program based on what those two local employers need to fill those open job demands. So
I like that.
That answer your question, Shub? Those are the three data points: completion, certification, job attainment.
It does.
And Shub, can you ask the question again?
So like Jennifer said, we're just trying to understand from an employer's perspective, what sort of data points they ask from you and what are the benchmarks they've set for themselves when they look at hiring or getting skilled, right? So like she said, like retention rates and how much time does it get them to scale, right? So I think I was trying to allude to. I think, and Mark, this is, I think, very important for you as well. How much do you see the employers actually getting involved with you guys to build these curriculums out and train your teams out in terms of when they are trying to talk to these students and university partners? How much involvement really lies from the employer partners to build that curriculum and process out with you guys? And does that really happen? We do work with certain folks like Anchor Education is one of our larger folks in that industry, and they do a lot of work in this space. But I've seen a lot of work happening with them in collaboration with the employer partners. So how do you guys handle that challenge essentially?
Yeah, I mean, Jen is obviously a huge part of that on the front end in terms of identifying what they need. And then they also work with our product team if there is something specific. I know we have developed niche programs in the past to cater to particular partnerships. I'm not as heavily involved in that. Jen, I don't know if there's anything you want to add there.
Yeah. Well, being that all of our programs are reviewed, approved, vetted, if you will, by the certifying body, if we need to make tweaks, we can, but typically, because our curriculum is so aligned to national certifications, there's not much tweaking we have to do. It is very much an off-the-shelf solution. Now, like Mark said, we have made exceptions. We have created, little bridge courses or reordering of content based on how educators at the employer want to run and offer programs. But for the most part, it's pretty off the shelf, ready to go as is, just because of the nature of the way the curriculum's built tied to the certification. So for example, our pharmacy technician program, it's RX 3000 for us is an accredited program by the ASHP. So we can't change anything about that, as you guys are very familiar, unless that is reviewed, approved, and signed off on by the ASHP. Employers typically want that accredited program by the ASHP. So, it's already so heavily vetted before we go to market with anything that the curriculum is super aligned to who is hiring for what. It's pretty rare that we have to make any changes, but we certainly have on a kind of case-by-case basis.
Mark, what's giving you confidence in enrollment these days? I mean, I talk to so many people. Enrollment's down at the institutions. You hear enrollment cliff. There are some institutions from a university standpoint, they're doing very well and scaling very big. You add in the devaluation of the degree, the rise of micro-credentialing and certifications, the social media, I would say, noise. And, well, you didn't need to go to school at all. Just go on these websites and you'll be as smart as Elon Musk. There's so much noise around students. What's giving you confidence? What's giving you pause in the world of enrollment these days that you can add to our audience here?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think fortunately for places like us, and we're not the only ones, we've been on the receiving end from a positive standpoint in a lot of that social media influence and a lot of that noise that you're mentioning. I think in today's day and age, it's that micro attention span. Whether it's good or bad, that's what most people are walking around with now. They're looking for that quick, I can get some knowledge. I mean, YouTube is probably a competitor of ours when it comes to education, right? I mean, rewind 10, 15 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case, but that's where a lot of people are going for their knowledge and for their education is they want it fast and they want it short and they want it to the point. So we've developed our programs and built them in a way to get them all of the content they need. Once again, not only to be able to pass a national certification, because it's not like we're just providing content for content's sake. Like all of our programs are vetted and all of our programs align to a nationally recognized certification. We knew that in order for us to truly be that provider that can get you into the career, it had to align to something that is recognizable. So we use 12 elements of learning. We provide a ton of simulation-based training. We try to meet the students where they're at today. They want things quick. They want things in a technical way. And they want to be able to consume it at their own pace. And in most cases, probably right directly from their phone or iPad. So we've tried to accommodate to all of those over the years as we've kind of continued to scale. I mean, back in the day, we used to send a USB thumb drive with all of our content loaded on it, and a device for them to be able to play that back on. Fast forward to today, they can access it all right from their phone anywhere in the world as long as they have an internet connection.
When I do my keynotes, I'll say that today's students are like the skip intro button on your favorite Netflix show, right? We're so impatient as humans that we can't wait the 45 seconds for the intro. We skip it right away. And I'll talk about that when I talk to faculty and staff. And, a lot of times people are shaking their heads going, well, you can't apply that idea to higher education. They can't skip. And I say, well, they can't skip learning, but you can cut out all of the non-essential items. It's not essential that I watch the introduction. Maybe the first time, but after that, I don't need to watch it again. So how do we think in that way? And you do get a lot of this. Oh, yeah, let me see it.
You can't handle the truth.
Right? Because nobody really wants to hear that students, it's this mismatch of what we expect in our personal life and that we don't execute in our professional life for students.
Well, and going back to your reference of skipping the intro, some, shows are trying to get almost too creative now. They're trying to get too smart where they build it, bake in Easter eggs where it's like, if you don't watch the intro, then you miss what potentially was going to happen. It's like, why are you making it that hard for the person consuming your content? We try to cut that out. And we don't want to have to go through this big, like, aha moment at the end, like, oh, that's why they made me go through all of that because it got me to this. It's like, no, we just give you what you need. We tell you what it is up front. We lay it all out. You're not forced to go through an experience to have a realization moment. This is the content. This is how we provide it. This is how you consume it. And we're going to hold you accountable to the end.
Shoot.
Yep. So I think I love the fact about how you guys start talking about in general about how your audience is changing, right? So you have different kinds of audience who's either used to is a Netflix generation or an Amazon generation, an Uber generation. They want to get everything done on the click, right? I think, and this is my guess, a majority of your audience is also adult learners who are juggling with jobs and families and responsibilities and everything around that, right? So before even they actually get into the learning, I would love to know, Mark, how are you guys handling have you changed something on the enrollment strategy side in general to cater to these folks who are probably going through multiple steps or multiple things in their life, right? How are you making sure your reps are trained and having conversations with them? Because that conversation will probably be very different with, let's say, a high school student, right? So what are you changing on that end essentially to cater to this kind of audience?
Yeah, so it's all about mirroring who you're speaking to. So if you're talking to a, recent high school grad who doesn't even have the time to be on the phone call and would rather be texting you anyways, you probably want to be short and sweet and ensure that you're highlighting the benefits and the cool parts of our program from a technical standpoint that we know that they're going to want to know about for them to make their informed decision. For that demographic that's older, that maybe has already been through a career or even two and is looking to kind of transition, we try to identify what have they done, how have they done it, so then we can apply to, well, which program makes the most sense? Because if you take this program, it's going to lead you to this industry path, which will probably be this type of job placement, which would have you doing these type of things on a daily basis. So we can really kind of meet that student and understand what would you actually be interested in doing and what would you be good at based on your prior experience. And then our program, for all the benefits that it has, really aligns to any demographic. Like you mentioned, they probably have a family they're trying to raise and support. They probably have other obligations. Well, that's the beauty. I mean, it's not ideal, but sacrifice is sacrifice. You could take our program after the kids go to bed until 2 a.m. every day, and that could be your time to take the program. We're not bound, once again, by that traditional schedule and that physical, place that you have to be at on a certain days of the week in order to take our program, which is what probably prevents a lot of that demographic from ever even considering education, because they're like, when am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? They probably can. Once again, if you're willing to sacrifice enough, anything is possible. But we try to make the sacrifice that much less. We try to remove some of that barrier to entry.
Yeah, a
and
really
the cost,
good example of that. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was saying, and just the cost alone in a lot of cases helps them make that decision, because it's very cost effective in order to be able to get them to where they're trying to go, which is into that new career, into that educational journey.
Yeah. For example, if you think about the different learning modalities, some students want a person, right? They want to show up, they want to go into a classroom, they want to have an educator. Some, especially adult learners managing family, managing jobs, they can't, So for example, again, Franklin University, one of our academic partners, they offer both options. So you can become a surgical technologist going a degree route, having a teacher, they plug in the MedCerts curriculum into that full degree, or you can enroll at Franklin and take a MedCert certification that's online, self-paced on your time while you have multiple things going. So I think in this world of higher education, often we think of like it's an either or, but really as the enrollment decline is happening, right, we have to think about it has to be both and. We have to have multiple offerings to get a variety of learners to the table.
We want to know from the two of you, sort of, we have a final question, but want to give you some open mic time. Jennifer, we'll start with you. What else do you want to say about MedCerts? Anything, open mic, and then tell us what you see for the future of higher education, and then we'll get Mark's answers.
Oh, you guys have asked great questions. I think the one thing I would leave with is, in this space that we're in now, consumable content, there are a lot of ways and competitors, if you will, out there on the market. MedCerts has been around doing it the longest, right? So just for anyone that's listening to the podcast or any consumers of educational content, like that means something, right? Just be cognizant of what is out there in the market. We've been doing it a really long time. I always say we've been doing online education before it was cool. Mark talked about sending a USB drive, right? So that, and then we've trained over 100,000 students in all 50 states. So we are constantly investing our research and development budget into our content, our curriculum. We've, as of late, introduced a really neat AI patient experience where a student talks to an AI patient and says, "What brought you in here today? Tell me about your family medical history." And then in real time gets graded on communication and critical thinking. So, open mic, I thought I was going to say one thing. I think I said two there. The introduction of AI, and just we've been at it for a long time, and that has some weight. So I'll leave it with those two nuggets.
Mark, what else do
Awesome.
you want to say about MedCerts? What do you see for the future of higher ed?
Yeah, so I think the future of higher ed is bright. Like I said, I think there's a lot of people similar to us that are trying to bridge that gap between that individual who may have never considered education. So they're starting with places like us. They're finding their way. They're finding their path. We're obviously always pushing students in that direction of continuing your education. The educational journey really never ends for anybody, right? So that's where I see the future. I see it being bright, even with everything going on and all of the noise. I think that it's here to stay. I think the thing that gets me excited about what we're doing, Jen kind of alluded to a lot of it, so I don't want to just reiterate everything she said, but we're short-term programs with a lot of impact. Like, it truly gets you, and I said this a couple of times, it's job ready, not just educated for that certification. That's why we've been able to establish all the employer partners that we've made now in the last 5 years or so. Is they understand that we're not just providing content to get a student to pass an exam. We're actually getting them prepared to fill a role within their organization. And that's why most of our students come to us. That's why they've trusted us for years, because we do provide the content. Maybe I'm biased, better than anybody else out there. But our content is not just geared around passing an exam. It's geared around getting them prepared for a career. All nationally recognized certifications. So these are not niche one-offs that you're not going to really be able to apply anywhere. You'll be able to take these. You can move from state to state. You're not bound to the area in which, or the demographic in which, that you started the program in. And I think the part that kind of gets me really happy too is I've been working with this team since I started day one. Is we do support military families. Not only do we support the spouse of military families, but we support the active duty soldiers as well. We've done, I mean, at this point, my number might be a little bit off, but over 30,000 military students, alone. So
Victory!
That gets me excited.
It should. And I'm excited after talking to you two. Shu, what'd you think of this episode? And did you learn the things that you thought you would learn when you said it at the beginning?
Did you buy your tickets yet? Higher Education's first podcast conference is coming July 12th. Go to higheredpodcon.com, higheredpodcon.com. Get your tickets.
Absolutely. No, I think one of the things that we've been trying to figure out on our end is how do we collaborate and how do we help the industry more? And I think that's probably what's the end message that I got from Jennifer and Mark as well, that the way they're collaborating with universities, the way they're trying to collaborate with workforce development partners on the IT side, on the health side, I think that's the key. That's the only way I see the workforce gap being filled in. And I think that's the major learning for us. And we'll probably sometime after this podcast, we'll love to have a conversation on how we can bridge gaps internally on the IT side of it. So no, I think this was a great conversation, Jennifer, Mark. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I very much appreciate it because the amount of scheduling gymnastics that I had to put you guys through to get to this point. And I'm like, man, I shouldn't have done that. I should have made more time, because it's great insight. And I think the big takeaway for me is, if we can partner with MedCerts, it's pipeline. It's for a university to be able to partner with you to break down their barriers of PLA and CPL, take those certifications as credit, bring a student in, cut down the amount they're going to pay, and get a student who's finished something and let them continue on. That's my big takeaway, is let's turn that 10 partners into 100 partners for MedCerts. That sounds good, right? Sound good to you guys?
Great. Yeah. I need one of those buttons for that one.
I don't have it. Yeah, I'll use the victory again.
Victory!
Yeah.
There we go. That'd be victory. I have a lot of others, but you can't put me on the spot like that. I think I froze again, but that's okay. We loved this episode this much.
100%.
How's that? Better, Jennifer?
There we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, here they are. Mark Adamo, Jennifer Kolb of MedCerts, my guest co-host Shub from Lead Squared. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just ed upped.